Hey everybody, welcome, and thank you for listening to this episode of Marriage Therapy Radio. My name is Zach Brittle. I'm here with Laura Heck. Today we're here with Susan Morgan Taylor. I gotta tell you, this was a really great interview. I found myself captivated by what Susan was sharing. She goes into some of her theories and practices around sex therapy or sex coaching, and I hope that you will work with her. I hope you'll give her a call. I have clients right now that I'm going to refer to her. Before we get started, though, I wanted to draw your attention once again to our Patreon campaign for the summer and say a very huge thank you to Craig and Chris and Stephanie and Allie and Brian and Kimberly and Tahiana. I got to tell you, it is very encouraging to see you stepping up and helping us continue to do the good work here at Marriage Therapy Radio. But again, we do need your help. Really hope that you'll consider chipping in and joining the Patreon community if you haven't done that already, which is most of you. But it's not just for us. It's for everybody. It's for everybody who's out there trying to make their relationship better today than it was yesterday. That's what we're doing today with Susan Morgan Taylor. I think you'll really enjoy her. This is a very cool conversation. Stick around. Susan Taylor, hi. Thanks for coming on to Marriage Therapy Radio. Where are you at right now?
No, I am located
in the boonies, she said.
The boonies, yeah. The beautiful mountains of Western North Carolina. I moved here from Austin, Texas about a year ago. And it's just like my dream come true. So I live in heaven on earth, in my opinion.
I grew up in Roanoke, Virginia.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a real beautiful area as well. And not terribly far from here.
No, it's probably the airport that you would use. Maybe Greensboro.
Yeah, we use Asheville as the closest airport to where I live.
Have you found David Wilcox yet? Do you know who that is?
I don't think so. Who's that?
He's a singer-songwriter that we had on the podcast a few years ago. He's become a friend of ours, but he lives in Asheville, and he has a kind of a little cult fan base there, and plays a lot of shows kind of in and around that part of town and that part of the country. So you'll stumble onto him before too long, I'm sure.
I'm sure I will.
Hold on, Zach. What's the deal with people on the East Coast? Because
what's the deal with
it's
them?
almost like when you meet one person from, let's say, oh, you're from Amsterdam. Do you know my uncle? He lives in Amsterdam. I feel like East Coasters, I get that things are a lot closer, but it's just I live in this other state. Are you familiar with that location? It's
well, saying you're from Western North Carolina is sort of like saying, if you live in Seattle, it's sort of like saying you live in Olympia, or sort of like somebody telling you they live in Portland. I mean, it's that close.
Okay.
And so the other thing is, for me being out here in Seattle, when I hear about anybody from the East Coast, I'm like, I want to connect with you personally about the thing that we probably both have once laid our eyeballs on at the same time.
Well, she's been there for 1 year. So Austin, Texas is what you would have awareness of.
Yeah, everything out here is so much closer. So that makes sense because Texas is huge. So you wouldn't get that in Texas. But yeah, I love North Carolina, and it's just absolutely beautiful. And yeah, everything's closer. So it's not like living in, it takes a day, 8 hours to get out of the state of Texas, an entire day just to drive out of that state. Here I could be in, DC in 8 hours. So.
All
right. Well, Zach,
we've been talking a lot
questions.
Offline. Yeah, we were talking a lot about kind of what directions we're going to go and how we're going to hear about it. I said, I'm going to get the ball rolling because I have a question. It's actually pretty fascinating because I'm sort of asking this question everywhere now. I asked Laura a couple weeks ago because you're a sex therapist, and I want to know, what is that? What is a sex therapist? And when people say, hey, I'm looking, or sex coach, you can tell me what you are. But when somebody comes and says, hey, I want a sex service provider. Well, maybe that's the right way to put it too. I want
it's not.
I'm a sex worker. No. Okay. All right. Here's my question. When people ask you about what you do, or when you tell them what you do, what do you do? What is it?
Yeah, so I do call myself a sex therapist. My background, I have 10 years as a licensed mental health professional where I had a sex therapy practice, really working under the license as a mental health sex therapist, which is one brand of sex therapist. So I do still use that title for my work. However, I've shifted away from working under the license and have really shifted more into the coaching aspect, specifically somatic coaching, somatic sex coaching. And I know we'll talk about what that is in a minute, but yeah, what is a sex therapist? I think it's a really broad question. Laura, you answered that beautifully in a recent episode that you guys did that I was just listening to a little bit ago. And It kind of depends on who you ask around that.
Cool.
To be honest. And I have a little bit more of a liberal definition of what a sex therapist is. A sex therapist could be a licensed mental health professional who specializes in human sexuality, like I did for 10 years. You may or may not have the certification through one of the bodies, such as ASECT. My definition of it is I don't think that that's a requirement in order to call yourself a sex therapist. I don't have that certification on purpose. I have many other types of trainings and backgrounds and things that just lit me up a lot more. A sex therapist could also potentially be somebody who is working more hands-on with a person. Like we might really refer to that as a sex coach, or a sexological body worker would maybe be a more accurate description. But not, those people may also use the term sex therapist. Rarely we use the word sex therapist for a professional who has sex with a client. However, there are people out there, and that is their expression of sex therapy, and they do engage sexually with a client. We usually refer to those people as sexual surrogates, not sex therapists. So typically a sex therapist is not having sex with a client, but it's really a professional that works explicitly with human sexuality and helping clients overcome challenges with some aspect of their sexuality, which could be so diverse. We have what we might call sexual disorders, all the way up to the desire discrepancy question that we'll talk about today, all the way just to couples that want to improve intimacy, have better communication. So it's a very broad gender identity. That's a really huge one. Polyamorous relationships, non-monogamy. There's all these different aspects that sex therapy really encompasses. So what is important, and I know in my work especially too, is really like each sex therapist is going to be very different in how they work and also what they focus on. It really is a very niche practice, a niche area of work. In my work, I really specialize. My specialty, my background, what I'm passionate about, really started in women's sexuality and overcoming low libido or low sexual desire in women. That's kind of tied in with some of my personal awakening in that area over a decade ago. And then that actually ended up translating into working mostly with couples. That's what just showed up. And this desire discrepancy piece, which is just rampant out there in the world, where that means that's the clinical term for when one partner has a higher desire for sexual intimacy than the other. And I see so many people just get stuck there. And the beauty of that is that it actually can be a rather simple problem to solve. However, the challenge is that people don't have the tools, the knowledge, or the education for how to bridge that gap. So that in my work, that's where I come in. I bring in the best of what I have found out there in the world to really help my couples bridge that gap. And there's a number of ways that I do that. But that is one of the main challenges that I solve in my work as a sex therapist and somatic sex coach. So those are the two titles that I use for my work.
Wow. That
Brilliant.
was badass, by the way. Like if I was sitting next to you on an airplane, I'm like, what do you do? And then that's what you give me. I'm like, that is so succinct and clear in exactly what you do. Bravo. Very clear.
Hey gang, I just want to take a minute to talk a little bit about becoming a patron of Marriage Therapy Radio. We're trying to do this in order to keep the lights on. Honestly, Laura and I are committed to running Marriage Therapy Radio through the end of the year, but we're having to ask some hard questions about whether or not we can afford to do that. We have created a Patreon that has some benefits to you. There are some behind the scenes looks at what's going on in our lives. There are some bonus episodes that we're creating. There's a book club option. There's also an option just to support Marriage Therapy Radio out of the kindness of your own heart. Turns out we need about 30 people at each level. So we need about 30 people to buy us a cup of coffee, one for every day. We need about 30 people to buy us a sandwich, about one for every day. We need about 30 people to buy Laura a cocktail, about one for every day. And then we need a handful of you who are just interested in supporting the work that we have going on here. I know that there are some of you who could give $25 or $50 or $100 a month without blinking an eye. And I'm hoping that you will decide that keeping Marriage Therapy Radio on the air is a good thing. We are not trying to be influencers. That is not our goal. We're not trying to make $1 billion. We do not want to even have this cheesy brand that we're promoting, but we do want to continue to have influence in the area of relationships and making the world a better place. So if you have an inclination to support our work, if you are interested in some behind the scenes stuff or being part of the book club or anything in between, or if you just want to continue to show your support for the podcast, we welcome you to visit marriagetherapyradio.com and find the Patreon page there where you can come on at any one of the levels, and we're going to give you a shout out just like we did at the top of this episode. and make sure that you know how much we appreciate you. We do. We appreciate you listening, spreading the word, telling your friends to listen, putting reviews on Apple Podcasts, supporting our sponsors, paying attention to social media. All of that helps us continue to do what we'd love to do, which is hang out with one another and hang out with you and continue to make the relationships better today than they were yesterday. Hey gang, it's Zach. I'm here to talk to you about the Paired app. That's an app that you can download on your phone that helps you stay connected to your partner. Rebecca and I have been using this app for about a year. It's been really great to start conversations for us. We find that we talk about things that we wouldn't normally talk about. The app, again, it's called Paired. It's an app for couples who want to strengthen their relationship. It was founded on the simple belief that real, lasting love is a daily practice, which we care about. It's kind of in that whole realm of small things often. All of Paired's content, by the way, is backed by experts and relationship therapists, and it's proven to work. What happens is you and your partner download the app, you pair together, and every day Paired gives you personalized questions, quizzes, and games to stay connected. Deepen your conversations and have fun too. The best part is you can't see your partner's answer until after you've answered for yourself. So it's a safe space to have an open and honest discussion about your relationship. No faking it, no pretending, just genuine connection. Again, you might offer a risky answer and wonder if that's going to color your partner's answer. It's not going to. They won't see yours until you see theirs. We learn new things about each other, which may be more relevant for newer couples, but even for us, it's still a way for us to strengthen our relationship. You can find new ways to spice up your routine as a couple because several of the quizzes are about sex and romance. And again, we use it. Plenty of my clients use it. I think you should too. So whether you're a few dates in or have been together for a long time, find the time to connect with your partner and nourish your relationship with the Paired app. It's easy and fun. It only takes about 5 minutes a day. So head to paired.com/MTR, get a 7-day free trial and 25% off if you sign up for a subscription. Just head to paired.com, paired.com/MTR and sign up today. I get to ask my second question now because you teed it right up, but
yes.
What are people supposed to do with this word somatic? What does that mean? And when you say it, what are you talking about in terms of
I love this question, and I get that a lot. And first, I want to say that I think that the somatic sex therapy is really the future of sex therapy. Somatic really means body-based, experiential, where we're not just coming in with the logical mind. And there's a place for that, and that is very important to talk about challenges. Somatic means that we're going to start including what's happening in the body. What am I feeling? What actually happens when a situation arises and I avoid or I pull back that's keeping me from being able to engage sexually with my partner. So we're actually working on a much more experiential level. And that doesn't necessarily mean that, you could take that word experiential all the way to like, okay, you're going to have sex like in a session. And that's valid. That's not necessarily what that word means. Somatic can also mean people who work and use touch as part of their practice. And that can be sexual touch or non-sexual touch. Primarily in my practice, I work with couples and I teach them how to actually touch. There's a whole structure to how pleasure, desire, and arousal actually exist. Like I call it like the anatomy of pleasure, the anatomy of desire. And a lot of it has to do with how we're able to access that and then understanding how to navigate the relational space in terms of who is this for right now. And that's where a lot of couples get off the same page. There's a lot of stuff happening sexually or in the relationship and intimacy where nobody knows who it's really happening for. He thinks that he's just trying to please her and do everything for her. Meanwhile, she's like, I'm giving you everything and you still want me to be something different. So two people are in this place where they're trying to give, and there's nobody actually in the receiving role. And that's where a lot of those train wrecks happen. And and then it's just like, well, forget it. I just can't please her and he'll never be happy. And so part of the somatic piece is learning about we learn it. One of the ways we learn it is through touch, non-sexual touch to start, but all of what you learn, the skill set can be applied sexually. And it's really about learning how to access your own genuine desire. Like, what do I actually want right now? Learning how to give voice to that, how to ask for that thing, and then having the experience of receiving that thing, no more and no less. A lot of times what happens is either we have no idea what we want, so we default to whatever the heck is happening. And, there's no clarity there. We don't even know what's happening. Who is this actually for right now? And there's confusion that happens there. So once we know what we want, we can actually then, the second piece of that is, can I give voice to that? Can I ask for that desire to be received? Right? For me to receive that desire. There's different ways we can do that. And then the piece of actually receiving it without it having to be like, you should want more than that. Is that all you want? that's not, why do you only want that? Or, whoa, that's way too much. Can you want less? Like, so those kind of responses are the things that get sort of embedded a lot of times in sexual relationships. We're afraid to express our desire because we don't know what we want, or we don't want to hurt our partner's feelings, or we're afraid we'll be rejected. And so we end up just kind of, well, I'll just go along with what's happening. And that never leads to more pleasure. It never leads to more intimacy. It never leads to more connection. So some of what this somatic piece is about is unwinding that and actually creating clarity around what's actually happening. Who is it for? Whose desire am I following right now? Is it for me or is it for you? And once we have that and we're clear in it, that's where pleasure can actually live. We start to understand giving and receiving as two separate things, very separate roles with really distinct job titles, so to speak, very distinct skill sets in each of those roles of giving and receiving. And when we learn how to pull those apart in a sort of a contained way, which is what we do in the sex therapy and sex coaching, somatic sex work, when we learn to pull those apart, then we can really have the experience of authentic pleasure. Once we find pleasure where it already lives, no one's pressuring us to want more or want less. Once we find where it already exists, from there, it can actually expand. What never works is when we're trying to force the body to have pleasure. I'm supposed to like this thing that's happening to me and I don't, so I'm just going to really try to like it. It never works. So that's kind of one of the aspects of the somatic work. Somatic, in a nutshell, just means that we're including the body and that we're including experiential learning that happens through the body and oftentimes through touch.
Game on.
Again, I'm on the airplane and I'm like smarter than I was 5 minutes ago, which is really nice.
Okay. So, I mean, this is kind of taking me back to some courses that I took. And I work virtually with my couples. I noticed that you are global, you're worldwide, which is great because our listenership is worldwide. And so it's always been really interesting in instructing couples. And I will say, having couples touch each other in the comfort of their own home actually is beneficial for us because, well, at least I have found that it's beneficial that they feel safe in their own space. They have, their own blankets. They have their own, like shades that they can pull, their own candles. And so they're able to create that safe space. So if I'm instructing them to touch each other and I do a bit of, I want you to touch each other and this time it's going to be for her pleasure and I want for you to talk to him and all of that good stuff. It's really helpful to have them be in their own space and to be talking to them virtually. So I just wanted to mention that piece that if you're listening, you're like, oh my gosh, Susan, we need you in our life. You can be in their life no matter where they're at in the world. Is that right?
Absolutely. And and it works beautifully with couples, especially with the touch, because you have the touch can actually happen when you're working with a couple. And you're right, like the virtual piece is so incredible because you do have the privacy of your own home. You have the option to turn off the camera. Now that I don't work under a mental health license, I have a lot more liberty with how I can work with clients somatically. So actually, if a client is ready for it, if we've built the foundation and we want to start to include more sexual type of touch between the couple, that is an option. The camera can go off. Or you can try your thing. We can come back on camera. So there's a lot more freedom really in that regard in terms of working with the touch. And yes, it's so much easier when you are in your own space. You have your own setup. It's private. No one's gonna, you're not worried about, some other person in the office down the hall, so there's a real advantage to the virtual work with couples. And then I will say also with individuals, because I'll get this question from time to time also, like, well, how do you do this with an individual? And what I'll say is it's not really any different other than the expression of the desire. And it might not even be a touch related desire. When we're talking about expressing desire, it doesn't have to be necessarily around touch. We could ask for anything. I want you to, get up and walk across the room. We're learning just to use the voice to connect it with what we want. When you're working with an individual, the beauty of it actually is that we're forced to slow down. What happens a lot in an in-person situation is we feel there's a lot of pressure to get to the actual thing. Like the goal of it is to get to the touch, which actually is a myth. It's actually not true. What we're really trying to do is slow down. And the most important thing before any touch or any action happens is the noticing. Can I notice what I want? And can I give voice to it? Those two pieces. And those are usually the parts that people skip over because they're so focused on, it has to be about the touch. I'm supposed to want some kind of touch. So actually through a virtual format, you have a lot more spaciousness and you're forced to slow down. And you can have those two pieces, which are the groundwork of all of it, actually develop much more quickly and more clearly because you actually don't have the in-person piece happening. So there's a real advantage as well in working with individuals virtually. And I'll say one more thing around somatics. We're working with the body, right? So I can take anybody into their body. I can guide somebody into their body. I don't need them to be in the room with me in order to help them have that experience of actually connecting with what's happening in their body. That's where all the information comes from. We don't need to be in an in-person setting in order for that work to happen. I've had extremely powerful sessions with clients. I've got someone, in Croatia right now that I'm working with, and it's been some of the most powerful work that I've witnessed.
Yeah, I got somebody for you. I'm like, let me see. I'm going to dial up this website right now, but I can do that later.
Yeah. As you were talking about being able to communicate to your partner what you want, like where the desire lives and how you want them to touch you, how you want them to communicate with you. I'm thinking about, this is part of the work that I find so interesting, is expanding people's knowledge and repertoire of like, you don't know until you've tried it, whether or not you enjoy it. And that's where I think finding, especially a lot of the clients that I work with have only been with each other. And so long ago, they discovered this is how we get to climax and this is what we do. And it's basically like a really well-worn written script. And so to be able to kind of expand and bring in a third party that might know, I'm going to say tricks, but it's not tricks. It's just like, who knows that you liked your earlobes licked? Your partner hasn't tried it. You can't lick your own earlobe. So maybe having a third person be able to say, have you tried this? Give this a shot. So I actually am kind of curious, like for folks who have, let's just say, kind of like a short list of this might feel good. I'm curious if you have any suggestions that might be able to expand people's exploration of what might feel pleasurable, where they might be able to say, hey, tonight, let's just try this and see if this feels good.
I do. I really do. And I think some of the best work that I have encountered out there in the world that I use in my practice are incorporated in is the work around the erotic blueprints. I don't know if you have heard of that. A woman named Jai developed it based on Jack Moran's work and the erotic mind and I would call it like erotic landscapes or arousal maps. She sort of took it to, expanded on that, but that's where that work comes from. So I just have found that to be so enlightening for myself personally, because what we tend to do a lot of times, especially when it comes to sexual intimacy, we go straight for what would be called like the sexual blueprint, which is going straight for breasts, genitals, and sensual touch. The sensual is really just, like long, smooth, like just touching the body, but that's not the only kind of touch that's available. And so a lot of what I'll do around this piece, instead of giving ideas where we'll try this or try that, it's like, okay, let's experiment with these different types of touch. Let's try energetic touch, which is barely touching maybe not touching the body at all. Very, very light feather strokes, having distance and spaciousness. Let's try that. Let's try you across the room from me, just making eye contact, and let me see how my body responds to that. Do I want you closer? Where is my turn on? Do I shut down when you come closer? Or do I get more turned on? Do I want to move you 10 steps away in my turn on? So it's really following the turn on. Can you move at the pace of your own turn on? So that's energetic. So that's a way to play where there's almost very light touch or no touch happening. It's playing with energy. Then there's other types of touch that might be considered more like sensual touch, where you're using perhaps oil or, having incense burning, mood lighting, music, all the senses engaged. And that type of touch is really, it's like if you do any kind of massage, those effleurage strokes. I was a massage therapist for 25 years. But there's
I read that. That's very cool.
Yeah, our bodies are just entwined. There's no space. It's like, I want to get as close as I can and just have lots of time and space to unfold. So experimenting with that. And then we have direct sexual touch, which is just going straight for the genitals and breasts and the lips and the butt and the asshole, all of that. Some people are going to get really turned on, like just get straight down to it. Let's go straight for it. But there are a lot of people where that is like, my body, it's too much too fast. My body doesn't open. And so what tends to happen is we think, well, something's wrong with me because he touched my clitoris right away and I didn't get turned on. So what's wrong with me? Fix me. When really probably what's happening is you need a different kind of touch before you're going to be open to that direct sexual stimulation. So we're all wired a little bit differently. The last type of touch is what Jaya calls kinky. And so that is a broad range. It could be psychological kink, like domination and submission, actually using words, bondage, being tied up. It's a huge range under that particular blueprint. But for some people, that is like their main gateway into arousal. So you want to think about these different types of touch. I like to think of them as literally, it's just like your doorway into your turn on. We all really have access to all of the different ways, but we tend to be dominant in one over the other. So it's so enlightening to know, like, what is my main expression? What is my main arousal map? And I know what I learned about myself, and I'm going to share this because I think it will help your listeners. When I would self-pleasure, I would go just straight for like the sensual and the sexual. I'd go, I'd get oil and I would lube myself all up with breasts, genitals, thighs. I would go straight and it was fine. It wasn't like there was anything wrong. I could get turned on and have a nice time with myself. But what I learned about myself is I actually am wired very highly on the energetic. And I had never thought that during a self-pleasure, an option for me would be to have no touch at all, or even just hands off the body with some really sexy music playing. And so once I kind of had that as an option, I had a whole new doorway into my arousal. And what I've discovered about myself is like, oh, wow, like that spaciousness, that distance, that light touch, that just like dropping into the feeling in my body, that is like my main gateway in. So I had a whole new range of things to play with for my turn on. And I think it's so eye-opening for couples to have that, because that's sort of the underlying thing really that's happening, right? When we're touching a body and we're trying to be sensual, or, what's the gateway in for your partner? Because it could be you've been going straight for the genitals and really what they want is you to be 10 feet across the room, like with eye contact.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm sort of in this conversation right now with a couple, and it's not as, of course, it's not this conversation because you're so brilliant and thorough, but it seems to me like part of what is a challenge for couples who are struggling with their sexuality is really a challenge of creativity. Like it's sort of, they have, like Laura said, kind of gotten into this rut or this routine of sort of predictable, unexamined sexuality. Yeah. And then that runs its course and all of a sudden you're bored or stuck or atrophied. And so you're just like, when you're talking, I'm like, oh, that's an idea. I mean, literally, I can place one of my clients from this week into the story you just told and be like, oh, that would have been good for me to say. Why don't you try a different kind of touch?
Yeah. I mean, the other thing I'll say to this is we also tend to get, generally speaking, kind of goal-oriented in sex. It becomes about getting to the climax. And so in that regard, a lot of couples are defaulting into, well, this worked. This is kind of what works for us to get to that. So we're just going to keep doing that to get to that. And so a lot of what I do in my work, the unwinding and some of the, the pleasure keys, which you said you guys were interested in learning about too. Really, it's about getting rid of this idea of like, let's get rid of the goal. Like, so if orgasm wasn't the goal, and what if even for now, let's even just back this way up and say pleasure is not even the goal. What if the goal was just to be present in your body, noticing sensation? If you were to completely shift your awareness from trying to get somewhere or get something, and instead I'm going to focus on my body and the sensations happening in my body, it changes the game completely. So that's kind of like the pleasure keys. The first piece in order to get to that is to just relax. We have to learn how to relax. If we're going for the goal of orgasm, we're not relaxed. There's immediate tension because we're trying to get somewhere. Anytime we're trying to get somewhere, there's already immediately going to be tension there. Tension is always going to work against pleasure, desire, arousal, and also works against curiosity. We stop being curious. We stop wanting to kind of veer off, when we get in that rut of that path, that's the thing that works and go, go, go. We stop curiosity. So for curiosity to come back online, we have to get rid of that goal and change the rules of the game from trying to get to climax to what can I notice in my body right now? Where is pleasure or something enjoyable already happening in my body? And can I just start to notice that? Can I put my attention there and breathe into that and start to follow that instead of the script that, that you've gotten into a routine with.
Oh, I mean, I want to hear more about the pleasure keys, you call them. So can you tell us more? Because that was just a little sneak peek, but I want to know more.
Yeah, there's really, the pleasure keys are really three fundamental principles that underlie anytime we're wanting to have more connection, more desire, more pleasure, access, arousal. These three principles are always at play. And I might even
I think everyone wants that. Yes, please.
Yeah, the bedroom, in all aspects of life. And the first one, like I said, is relaxation. So learning to get rid, tension is the biggest killer of pleasure and desire and arousal. We cannot access our turn on if we have tension. We're up in our head. We're worried about the to-do list. We're afraid to feel our emotions. So we're tightening around that. I don't want to feel sad. I don't want to feel angry, so I'm going to not feel. All of these things actually create tension in the body, which siphon off the flow of sexual energy. So relaxation is the first piece. And we can teach ourselves how to relax. And this is, again, where that somatic piece really comes in. It's really about, there's various practices that I use to help my clients cultivate this, but you want to think about it like you're exercising a muscle. A very simple tool for that in the Western world, we would call it mindfulness. In the Eastern traditions, there's a body of yoga called Yoga Nidra, which is a wonderful portal into just beginning to be in the body with sensation. It's that, there's a whole lot more to that, but in a nutshell, it's just, can I be in my body noticing sensation? We're shifting immediately out of the thinking mind and into the physical body. Automatically, what happens when we do that, the second pleasure key is presence. So when we're no longer kind of up in the mind, off in the future, hanging on to the past, and we're focusing on physical sensation in the body, we're immediately brought into the present moment. So the body is actually the most immediate and quickest way to be in the present moment. We don't have to attack negative thoughts. We don't have to watch thoughts go by, some of those techniques that are fine, valid, they have their place, but it's a lot harder than it needs to be. All we really need to do is shift to physical sensation, which brings us into the present moment. The third key is that of awareness. And so that's part of it, is where is your awareness at any time? Is my awareness out there? Am I focused on my partner right now? Am I looking out the window? Am I off at the grocery store? Is my awareness focused inward into the body? And I use this word a lot. Inward and downward is the direction that we move. As if we want to go more deeply into this conversation around deeper connection, getting out of habits, accessing desire, having more pleasure, the focus is inward and downward on what's happening in my body right now. Can I take my awareness internally? That brings me into the present moment. And in order to do that, I have to be relaxed. From there, I can start over time, eventually, to begin to notice subtler layers of energy. Would be the most subtle level. So you have physical sensation, emotions, and then subtle flows of energy in the body, which sexual energy would be one of those flows. So it's really just about exercising that muscle. And those are really the three fundamental keys: relaxation, presence, and awareness. And if we bring that into anything that we do, automatically you're going to have a deeper, more connected experience.
Actually, anything we do, including non-sexual things like our job or our parenting or our, that's relaxation, presence, awareness. Yeah.
How all of this sounds amazing. And I'm like, yes, I can do that. That sounds great. But how am I supposed to do that in the presence of another person? That's the piece where I'm like, once I go inward and I can start to connect my body with my brain and my sensations and my emotions, and then you throw in someone that I love and adore and also want to please, I'm like, okay, now we're overwhelmed. I'm just trying to figure myself out. And now I have to figure my partner out too.
Right. Yeah, that's such a good question. I would say a beautiful place to start is developing these, exercising the muscles on your own first. And so I do have a resource for your listeners. We can talk about that later, but I have an ebook and an audio that I'd be happy to share with your listeners to how to start to cultivate that in a solo practice. Is we have to, it is so much easier to kind of first learn how to do that within yourself. And you're right. Then when there's another person there's a couple things about that. I would say one of them is the art and the skill of learning to can I stay connected to my own internal experience while I'm in connection with another person? So learning how to actually have an open-eyed connecting with another human, but without disconnecting from what's happening here. That's not that easy to do unless you've cultivated this a little bit for most people. There's that piece. The second piece comes back to this conversation around who is this for right now? Am I choosing to follow my own pleasure? Am I going to just, let that come on? I'm going to go with that. I'm going to follow my desire. Or am I choosing to be willing to follow my partner's desire right now, to allow him to take charge, to allow him to lead, to allow him to do what he wants? These are two very different states that if you can feel this distinction in an embodied way, it's a total game changer. The lights come on and suddenly you realize, wow, all those train wrecks happen. They never need to happen again because you know who it's happening for. A good example, I use this happens a lot around oral sex, right? Like he's going down on her and she's like, I'm not really that into it, but I guess he wants to do this. And he's like, why isn't she getting off on this? I'm trying so hard to get her off.
I'm doing it for her.
Yeah, I'm doing it for her, but she's doing it for him. Like she's just allowing him to do it because she thinks he wants it. So when we know it's for me and my partner's going to go down on me, well, then you're going to make damn sure that I'm going to be like getting what I want. Let's make sure that you're following my desire. And to do that, he could be super tuned into me and maybe know me, but really to really do what I've got to also know what I want. And if it ain't happening the way I want it, then I'm going to, okay, let's make a little adjustment here. It's not working for me. Now, if it's for him, the really great thing about this, especially for women that are not into having oral sex performed on them, if it's for him, the cool thing is you're like, go at it, like have your fun. I don't have any pressure. I don't have to even have pleasure as long as I'm not like actively hating it. Like you're just having active if you like it, you're getting off on it, like enjoy yourself, like go at it. And there's no pressure on me to have any type of reaction or experience. So those two things are really game changers. And can really take a lot of those train wrecks out of the equation entirely once you get it in an embodied way. So that's kind of that relational thing about.
And that's back to the somatic piece.
Following in this moment. And, there are times where we just are in it and that, we're not thinking about that at all. But it's a real helpful tool to help couples get out of that desire discrepancy place where they get stuck or they give up. And then nobody's getting what they want.
Okay, so you mentioned desire discrepancy. Can you describe that for our listeners? Because this is probably the number one issue that couples who are coming to me for couples therapy are describing when I say, what else can I support you with? I also love to talk about sex and pleasure and desire. And they describe desire discrepancy. What is that? And how do you work with that?
It's such a good question. And I would say desire discrepancy is our clinical term for that, right, Laura? Like that's mostly what you'd hear clinicians say. You're going to hear your clients say, he has a really high sex drive and she doesn't, or I want sex more than he does, or I'm the low libido partner. How do you fix me? Where a lot of times you see that you're trying to get that low libido partner to match the high libido partner. And I would say that whole conversation on high libido, low libido, I think it's a myth. I don't buy into it. I think it's a lie. It's very real what's happening, that they're not on the same page. And that's really what desire discrepancy is. It's when one partner has a higher drive for sexual engagement than the other, at least on paper, at least presenting that way in the relationship. But it's rampant. It's everywhere. It's probably 99% of the work I do with couples as well. And how you move through that is by some of these tools that I mentioned earlier. Can you find what is your portal in to turn on? Because probably what she's been doing is not what it is for him, and vice versa. So there's that piece as well. Can we find, and then how do you learn to speak each other's turn on language? If my partner is wired sexually and I'm wired energetically, if I'm wanting to get him turned on, I'm going to go straight for the genitals and the lips, and like we're going straight for the sexual stuff because that's the thing that's going to get him going. He wants to get me turned on, and you start going straight to that right away. My body's just going to shut down. So he's got to learn the art and the skill of, okay, distance, light touch, teasing, flirting, right? So it's a very different portal in. So having that knowledge is really important. And I would say that's a really big one of how you get off of that. The other piece is just basic education. I think a lot of it around feminine sexuality, women's sexuality, is knowing that our bodies generally take way more time to get fully engorged, aroused, and really ready to become orgasmic and ready to even desire penetration. 9 times out of 10, penetration is happening way too fast for her, but nobody knows that there's any other option. right? We don't even know that there's an alternative. I mean, that was my case for many. I was like, I'm going along with it. I'm like, something's missing here for me. I don't know what. So I'll just blame my man, blame him.
Yeah.
But really, I didn't even know my own body. I didn't know this stuff about my body. And once I realized like, oh, I need way more time, then I could really advocate for myself in that. And very blessed to have partners that have been so accommodating to that. And because the guy gets so much more out of it too. Everybody does, even whatever kind of relationship dynamic you're in, same sex, heterosexual, you're going to get so much more out of it if your body is already open and a full yes. So like there's that piece too, that education piece. And most of the time it's the lack of education around women's sexuality, because what we get in the media and in books and movies is really what works best for most men, right? They're ready really fast. Orgasm happens in 2 minutes and everybody's happy at the end, right? That's not the case.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay. Man, I feel like we have just become so much smarter in such a short amount of time. And I really want to go back because I know that you teased to our listeners that you have an ebook. Can you tell them like where can they find that? Because I want to point them to your website. I want to point them to your ebook. I want them to have access to whatever you are putting out there in the world. Give it to them.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so the ebook is the Pleasure Keys. So it'll go into more detail on the actual 3 keys that we talked about today. You can get that at pleasurekeys.com. And then my main website is pathwaytopleasure.com. That's the main one where most of my sex therapy work is. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook under my name, Susan Morgan Taylor. And then I do actually have an MP3 audio, which I can maybe get that to you if you want to. I don't have that as a way where people can download it, but I could get it just for you and your listeners. If you'd like a link for that, I can share that with you for the show notes.
That would be very cool.
Just listening, you can contact me through my website at pathwaytopleasure.com. I'll be happy to share that resource because it's really the fundamental place where we all want to start. It's very simple. It's a 12-minute guided audio that will take you into the 3 pleasure keys, and so you can start to develop the muscles of those skills. It can really be a game changer.
Yeah. Wow. You are a wealth of knowledge. Are you teaching? As I'm listening, I'm thinking, I wish I had you as an instructor when I was going through sex therapy school. Maybe I'll see if I can rope you into it at some point.
You might be
pretty awesome.
Yeah, I don't have any right now. I'm just doing private coaching with couples and individuals, and some group retreats. I do have some in-person stuff that I do with groups where I teach the pleasure keys and some of those touch practices that I was talking about. I do those several times a year, and that is called the Pleasure Keys Retreat. So there is that I do, which is a key. I mean, it's so beautiful to see how people's lives change just in a short weekend from learning those skills and having the experience of it in their body. But I'd be happy to hear more about what you've got. You might be able to convince me to come in and teach a class. I love to educate on this stuff. It really, that we're so lost, I think, and it just doesn't need to be that way. We don't have to have so much struggle in intimacy and relationship. And I truly believe we can change the world by how we have sex and make love. And that's really my mission is to help bring illumination to couples that are struggling and, individuals as well.
I love it.
Me too. We didn't even get to know you personally, but I'm really curious, just as we wrap up like the professional side of it, what lights you up personally?
Oh my gosh. Well, I moved to these beautiful mountains here in North Carolina, and I am lit up by trees, waterfalls, nature. That lights me up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm into it.
You're in the right spot. It's a beautiful part of the country, Laura. You should visit it sometimes on the East Coast.
Come on out. I've got plenty of room to host guests. If you've got a place to stay, you let me know. Really.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the
meantime, Susan, you should check out the song East Asheville Hardware. East Asheville Hardware by David Wilcox. And it's a crack up because it's right there in your backyard.
I will look it up.
Yeah.
You cracked me up, Zach. Okay, well, we'll land this plane. Thank you for your time. This just was wonderful. I'm so glad that our listeners had the ability to get to know who you are and all that you are offering for couples and individuals. So I appreciate you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura and Zach. It was just been such a pleasure to be here with you. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Marriage Therapy Radio. Thank you to our guest, Susan Morgan Taylor. You can find Susan on her main website at pathwaytopleasure.com. As she mentioned, we're going to share some resources with you in our show notes, but you can also check her out on Instagram and Facebook. She has a ton of resources available for you. Thanks for all of your time and attention, making your relationship better today than it was yesterday.